Here, new episode of Chordplay. This is the Chords of Tesla, and if you go back far enough on this channel, you'll find an acoustic or unplugged version of this episode, kind of an acoustic side of Tesla's music. That was about 3 years ago, so you'll have to search around to find it. Also, the first episode of Scales and Tales, Learn From Your Mistakes, revolves around their song Modern Day Cowboy, one of Tesla's big hits. I just posted the Frank Hannon and Tommy Skeoch 3 for All, and I'm following that with this episode, which is the first electric side of Tesla's music. Like that image said, Tesla rocks. These guys are essential. They formed in Sacramento, California in 1981 and went on to become one of the most popular bands of the 80s and early 90s. And they exploded. And I definitely remember a time that Tesla was huge. They were on the radio, they were on MTV, they were in magazines, they were touring. They were right up there with Bon Jovi and Def Leppard. I mean, they were massively popular. And then eventually Tommy did leave the band, Tommy Skeoch, and was replaced by Dave Rude. And then they've continued. They're still active today. But without question, I mean, there's something really special about those early Tesla albums. And I do like some of their more recent music. But this episode is going to focus on those first two, Mechanical Resonance and The Great Radio Controversy. There's some great music there. And as badly as I wanted to move to more recent material, I got stuck on those first two, which you have to, excuse me or whatever, but it was like, no, this is great music. We have to look at this first. We can definitely revisit Tesla in the future, but this episode is going to focus on those classic albums. With the opening that's Rock Me to the Top from Mechanical Resonance, and like the title of the song suggests, that song rocks, like this. And it's all power chords, so it's pretty basic, but it's just rocking out. And I wanted to put this one first because I saw a live concert bootleg of Tesla, and they opened with this song. And when I saw that, I thought, well, that's the first example, for chord play. But it's an E power chord to B to C right there. And they're doing this kind of choke with the chords where it's not really like a muted strum, but there's like a little pause, between that B and C. So you're doing that B to C and then B to A, and you're kind of doing that choke thing. And then kind of an AC/DC G right there, and then back to A, and then you start it again like this. Second time you've got these hits and you're doing like a hit on C, B, A, like this. So C, B, A power chords, grab that G, and then you start it over again with the E, like this. And right there, just do it all over again. Okay, next up is Love Me from Mechanical Resonance. It's actually two guitars and they're panned left and right, but it's something like this. So that big rock out, chords or whatever. So it starts with that big slide into an A power chord, and then you're doing a D over A, that kind of 70s inversion right there. And that's one thing about Tesla's music. There's this heavy dose of a 70s influence. You can hear Zeppelin and Foghat, Bad Company, all kinds of stuff hiding in Tesla's music. But it opens like this. And then you hear it answered with the other guitar up here, and that's an E over A to an A right there, that 70s inversion. And then you also hear them slide the E down to that A and then back up to E. And you hear that kind of C to B right there. Next up is Lady Luck from the Great Radio Controversy, and it's something like this. Forgive me if I'm wrong, but I think Tommy Skeoch is the one that really pumped out some of those kind of aggressive, palm muted, riffs, almost like Metallica. But in certain Tesla songs, you can hear these aggressive, riffs like that. But it starts with this E power chord. So right there, you're doing the E power chord twice, and then you're sliding in to this E5 over G sharp right there. And then you're going to slide in this F over A right there. So you're kind of doing this like inversion, like that. But you're doing... And when you get that F over A out of the way, then you grab a C power chord right there. And then you hear it move from C to B flat 5. And then do it again. Second time, just hang out on that C power chord, and then when it comes around again, that's when you hear that kind of Metallica, kind of palm muted riff like this. Watch Tesla, because every once in a while they got real heavy, back in the day. Here's another example of that heavy side of Tesla. This is from Long Days, Crazy Nights from the Great Radio Controversy, and it's something like this. So it actually starts with 2 B power chords, and then you're playing an A sus2 like this. And you definitely hear this kind of effect, like they've layered some other things in there, but that's really what's happening, just an A power chord, and then you're picking that open B right there. And then you hear that change to this. So that's an implied C major 7. So I like that little subtle change in the chords, A sus2. C major 7, and at the end of that, play that twice, and then end with this, B to G right there, and then you go back to that A sus2. Like that. Then you hear 2 more B power chords, and then the riff changes. that part, and it's still A sus2, but you're playing it that way. And then you're changing the root note to C right there, and then magically that's an implied C major 7. And then you want to shift that to that B5 right there, that B power chord. And then do it again. But I love the way they variated those chords. A sus2 here, and C major 7, and then A sus2 here, and then C major 7. You know, really cool, just a little twist. You know, really clever stuff right there. Next up is Before My Eyes, one of my favorite Tesla songs, and this is for Mechanical Resonance, and it definitely has kind of an old school Aerosmith vibe. I don't know why I'm getting that out of the song, but a little bit of Aerosmith in here, but something like this. So it starts with this, and basically you can think of that, it's basically part of a D minor 7. You got the open D, that C, and that F note. You know, 3 of the 4 notes you need for D minor 7, but an implied D minor 7 right there. Then you hear that C move down to a B, and that's going to be basically a D minor 6. And then you hear that B move to B flat, that's a D minor flat 6. You just hear D5 right there, D power chord. So you've got this descending chromatic, thing happening right there, like this. Let me roll that volume back just a little bit, just to get some of that sizzle out of there. Basically hear it move to this, and it's just basically these little dyads, but you got a D5 to an implied D augmented, a raised 5th. So that D5, the A, is moving to an open D with an A sharp right there. So think augmented for this. And then right there, you're basically still holding that B flat, but you're going to change that open D to an E. And that's basically part of an F sharp 7, you could think, like that, like F sharp 7 over E. And then you want to change that E to an F, like that. So right there, you've got this little 4-chord progression, and you're really just changing one note, for each chord, like this. And do it again. To A, so do the same thing, just mimic it over a set of strings, and now you have an A power chord, and then implied A augmented right there. And you want to add this B note, and that's kind of an implied C sharp 7 over a B right there. And then right there, change that B to a C, and that's an implied F over C. So the same thing we had here, over a set of strings in the key of A. Really interesting, and once again, it's heavy. It's got that heavy kind of crunch to it. but not least is Party's Over from the Great Radio Controversy, another one of my favorite Tesla songs, and this song rocks like this. So you basically start with this big A power chord, but you're using that higher voicing up there. So grab that A and that E, and you're going to slide that off. And then you're going to an A power chord right there 4 times, and then you hear that pedaling open A string a lot during this riff. So you got this. So it's an A power chord to an F over A, and then that's when you start hearing that pedaling A string. And then you hear a G over A, and then it's a D over A. So you're hearing that open A at certain times like this. Then after that intro part, which is the first pass, right there, I don't know if you noticed it, but instead of doing the lower A, the second time you're doing that higher A that we started with. And you're keeping everything else the same. So it's like this, the first pass through the whole thing. And then repeat it again, starting the lower A. Really cool song, and if you're not familiar with that one, dive into Party's Over. It's really good. It's going to wrap this episode of Chordplay with the electric side of the Chords of Tesla, and there's just something really cool about this band. I've been a Tesla fan since I was in high school, and aside from the fact, that it debuted in the 80s, really you could take Tesla and pull them out of the 80s, and you could easily put them in the 70s. You could also pull them out of the 80s and stick them in the 90s, even though they definitely continued in the 90s and had, popularity. But even if they didn't appear in the 80s, like if you just, stuck them in the 90s and that was their first appearance, they probably would have fit in the 90s too. So they're one of those bands from the 80s that definitely was not glam. Tesla's not hair metal or whatever, glam rock or whatever. It had this classic rock, vibe and sound. Of course, Frank's playing Les Pauls and SGs and stuff when literally nobody else was. I mean, Slash was, Zakk Wylde was. But he was one of those rare players that was using, vintage gear or vintage, guitar models and stuff. Anyway, leave some feedback and comments. Please subscribe and learn lessons, and I'll be back before you know with more content and material. Thank you.